Hi, Greg Burkhart, Associated General Contractors, Northwest Ohio. I'd like to talk today, Intro to OSHA. This is a segment that is required by OSHA for our OSHA 10 and 30-hour classes. So what does OSHA stand for? OSHA stands for the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This is an agency in the U.S. Department of Labor. Their responsibility is to improve worker safety and health. The OSHA Act was signed into law by President Richard Nixon December 29, 1970. It went into effect officially on April 28, 1971. So OSHA's mission is to assure safe and healthy workplace for men and women by setting and enforcing standards and providing training, outreach, education, and assistance. And that assistance is in the form of training, assistance to employers, and also to employees. Some of the things that OSHA does to carry out their mission: develop job safety and health standards, enforce them through work site inspections. The compliance safety officers come out and do inspections on job sites, and providing training programs to increase knowledge about occupational safety and health. So why is OSHA important to us? Well, 5,250 workers were killed on the job in 2018. That's 5,250 people that went to work that day and never came home. 5,250 people who quite possibly had an evening planned with their family, whether it's a softball game, a baseball game, football game, or going to church, and that did not happen because of a mishap in the workplace. Average of nearly 12 workers every day die in the United States. OSHA maintains this statistic of Hispanic and Latino workers. 961 workers were killed in 2018. That should read 2018, not 2013. But the reason they do that is because it is focusing more on the language barrier. Are we communicating with other people who do not speak and understand English properly prior to allowing them to work on our job sites and our workplaces? Prior to OSHA going into effect in 1971, there were over 14,000 people dying on job sites at workplaces in the United States. That's 14,000 a year. Remembering, of course, that in the early 70s, there were probably half as many workplaces as what we have today. So that was huge. And the impact that OSHA has had on the American workplace has been fantastic. It has reduced the worker deaths significantly. One of the sad statistics that I did hear was that in the 1970s also, there were 14,000 soldiers being killed annually in Vietnam. So 14,000 soldiers and 14,000 Americans at workplaces being killed in the early 1970s. So what rights do we have under OSHA? Well, you have the right to a safe and healthy workplace, and that is done through the standards, the OSHA standards 1910 and OSHA 29 CFR 1926. 1910 is the general industry standard, and 1926 is the construction standard. You have the right to know about hazardous chemicals. The chemicals that you use in the workplace, you have the right to know about those. And that is through your safety data sheets. You have the right to report an injury to your employer, complain or request hazard correction from an employer. You have the right to training. You are supposed to be trained on certain aspects of your job. Fall protection, confined spaces, hazard communication, things like that. Hazard exposure and medical records. When you are exposed and there's a medical record created from that, those are yours. You have the right to file a complaint with OSHA regarding your workplace. You have the right to participate in an OSHA inspection, and we'll talk about OSHA inspections here in a little bit. And you have the right to be free from retaliation for exercising those safety and health rights. So, safe and healthful workplace, Worker Protection Law, Occupational Safety and Health Act, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, that's what OSHA stands for. OSHA was created to provide workers a right to a safe and healthful workplace, and like I said, they do that through the standards and through inspections. It is our duty as employers to provide workplaces that are free from known hazards that could harm employees. And the law also gives workers rights to participate in activities to ensure their protection from job hazards. Safety data sheets. It is your right to know about the chemicals that are in your workplace. This is done through safety data sheets. The safety data sheets are supposed to be easily accessible by employees. They contain the chemicals that are in the workplace. Those chemicals should be in the safety data sheets. They don't physically have to be available. They can be electronic, but all employees must know how to be able to get those safety data sheets to see what type of chemical they're using and how that chemical can hurt them. Worker training, any new chemical that comes into the workplace, there should be training for those employees on how to handle that chemical and the dangers of that chemical to them and the environment. Information about illnesses and injuries. If you work for an employer that has more than 10 employees, they must maintain what is called an OSHA log. And those OSHA logs are injuries that happen to the employer's employees throughout the year. You have the right, and actually most employers encourage you, as soon as you are injured, to report that injury to the employer. That employer, if there are more than 10 employees, they are required to keep a running log of those injuries. If it is not 10 employees, then they are not required to maintain those logs. Those logs must be maintained when an injury is reported. They must be updated within 7 days of the reported injury. They must be maintained on an annual basis, and from February 1st to the end of April, those logs must be posted so that all employees have access to those logs. And it simply has the name of the person that was injured, the injury, the date, the time away, if it was time off work, and that's what it is. It is a documentation of injuries at that workplace by the employer. It is against the law for any employer to retaliate or discriminate against any worker who reports an injury or an illness. But like I said, most employers encourage that because Bureau of Workers' Compensation statistics say that the sooner the injury is reported and the sooner that individual gets medical attention, the sooner they're back to work. So like I said, most employers encourage reporting those injuries. You have the right to complain or request corrections at your workplace. And you have that right without fear of discharge or discrimination or retaliation. Most contractors that I work with encourage employees to tell them about hazardous conditions on job sites. They want them corrected. Contractors want these situations corrected. They do not want unsafe work sites. They don't want injuries. Injuries cost too much money, cost too much time away, and ultimately they don't want to see anybody injured on their job sites. So you have the right, and it is expected of you to complain or to request corrections on job sites. Employers are obligated to provide training to employees for several situations. Regular training should be covered topics such as chemical hazards, equipment hazards, noise, confined spaces, fall protection. These are just to name a few of the items that is required for training by employers to their employees. And that training must be in a language and a vocabulary where workers can understand. The employees have the right to examine exposure and medical records. So anytime an employee goes to the doctor or has a medical record created because of a situation at work, they have the right to examine those records. Now, I can't examine anybody else's, as not anybody else can examine mine. They are only your personal records that you can examine. Things such as harmful dusts, metals, lead, cadmium, silica, anything like that, anything that has created a medical record, your employer must maintain it. They must maintain it for the length of your employment plus 30 years, and you have access to those medical records. You have the right to file a complaint with OSHA. And that complaint can be anonymous. So if you feel that you need to file a complaint with OSHA, you do not have to give your name to OSHA. But I personally feel the best way to correct that problem is to file a complaint or to talk to your employer about it. OSHA several years ago opened up this complaint line, and it has been very busy. So if OSHA does get the time to come out and follow up with the complaint, it may be a week or so later. We encourage every employee to file a complaint or to talk with their employer about a safety or health situation that they feel is important. The correct measures will be taken much quicker because, like I said, OSHA may not be able to come out for several days to look at that situation. If the worker does file a complaint, they have the right to find out about OSHA's action. And like I said, they do not have to, they can ask that their name not be given to the contractor and that they can make this an anonymous complaint. All complaints free from retaliation. Workers have the right to be free from retaliation for exercising safety and health rights. They have the right to seek safety and health on the job without fear of punishment, and that's all covered under Section 11C of the OSHA Act. Workers have 30 days to contact OSHA if they feel they have been punished for exercising their safety and health rights. Workers have 30 days to contact OSHA if they feel they have been punished for exercising their safety and health rights. And that includes termination. If somebody is terminated and they feel it was because of their complaint, they only have 30 days to file a complaint with OSHA to state that they feel that they've been retaliated against. So employees must keep that in mind, that 30-day time frame. What responsibilities does your employer have under OSHA? They must provide a workplace free from recognized hazards and comply with OSHA standards. Provide the training required by the OSHA standards. Remember, employers are responsible for your training. So they must provide the training to you to make sure you do the job properly and safely. Employers must keep records of illnesses and injuries, and provide medical exams when required by OSHA. That might be for lead exposure, that might be for silica exposure. And remember, all of these are accessible by you because the employer must keep those records. Length of employment plus 30 years. Your employer cannot discriminate against you. That's Section 11C of the OSHA Act. They must post citations, and they must provide and pay for most of your personal protective equipment. employers must report each worker death to OSHA. So, OSHA, you have a death on a job site. You have 8 hours to report that death to OSHA once you find out about the death. You have 24 hours to report to OSHA any type of hospitalization, work-related hospitalization, an amputation, or the loss of an eye. And that's when you are notified of all that. So if you're notified Monday morning that somebody was in the hospital over the weekend because they blew their back out and didn't tell anybody, then you must, once you find out about it, you have 24 hours to notify OSHA of that. Obviously, you must maintain medical records, inform your workers how to report an injury, make records available to workers, allow OSHA access to those records, and post your annual summary of injuries and illnesses. That's the February to April, beginning of February to the end of April posting. Allowing OSHA access to your records, OSHA will ask for your 300 log, and they usually give you 4 hours for that. Other training records and items like that, you will have longer. They'll give you 3 to 5 business days to come up with that type of record keeping. So the OSHA standards. We touched on this earlier. The general industry standard is 1910. Construction standard is 1926. Maritime, I believe, is 1915, 17, and 18. And I'm not sure what agriculture is. We deal in the construction industry. We deal with general industry 1910, and we deal with construction 1926. Standards also limit the amount of hazardous chemicals, substances, or noise that workers can be exposed to, require the use of certain safe work practices and equipment, such as fall protection equipment, confined space equipment, things like that, and requires employers to monitor certain hazards and keep records of workplace injuries and illnesses. So the types of OSHA inspections that are out there. So imminent danger, an OSHA inspector is driving to a regular inspection, a follow-up inspection, and they look to their left and they see somebody standing on a forklift on the forks and they're 15 feet up in the air. That's imminent danger. OSHA will stop and initiate an inspection right away. That is their number one priority. Next, they will do fatality or hospitalization inspections, worker complaints, targeted inspections, local emphasis programs, or even national emphasis programs. And those are programs where OSHA has decided that we've gotten too many fatalities or too many complaints, and we're going to focus on those. So local emphasis program out of Area 5, Region 5, which is Chicago, which includes us, may be totally different than a local emphasis program for, say, Washington State. It may be in Washington State a logging issue. Well, we don't have logging operations here, so we wouldn't have a local emphasis program for logging. National emphasis programs, we've got one going on right now for fall protection that's been in place for quite some time. Anytime they see, of course that goes into imminent danger, but a fall protection issue, then they will immediately stop. And then finally, follow-up inspections. And those may be simply an inspection that was done 2 months ago, and they have to follow up with that inspection. So those are the types of inspections that OSHA does initiate and go out on. I just want to emphasize the local emphasis program and the national emphasis program. Those, we do have to be aware of those because OSHA does focus on those on occasion. How are OSHA inspections conducted? Simply put, OSHA gains access to your job site. You either allow them or not. You do not have to allow OSHA on your job site. You can ask them to get a warrant. Not always recommended. It just seems that if you work with OSHA, that things seem to go better as opposed to being controversial right up front. But they will ask, when they get on the job site, you can ask for their identification. You can verify that identification. You can verify who they are and why they're there. You can ask questions. Please, please, please do not be afraid to ask questions. That is just a regular person just like you and I are. They will have an opening conference as to why they are there. You there again ask questions. At that point, there will be a walk around. You can ask who they want with you on that walk around. It can be an individual representing each union. It should be an individual representing each company. We suggest do not point things out. If OSHA asks you a question, you can or can't answer. It does not matter. If you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to answer the question. When they are done, actually we recommend that you start like a counterclockwise or a clockwise motion on your job site so everything gets covered. Maybe start at the top and work your way down, or maybe start at the bottom and work your way up. Once the inspection is completed, OSHA will probably ask you for some paperwork, probably ask you for your 300 log, maybe some training records. Like I said, they usually give you 4 hours to come up with your training log. Then they will have a closing conference, and at that point, throughout the next few months, OSHA has up until 6 months to issue the citation. They may be in contact with you on a regular basis to ask for more training records or just more paperwork. They have up to 6 months, like I said, to issue that citation. At that point, will come registered mail. If they do find citations, it will come registered mail, and then you will have 15 days to ask for an informal conference or just go right to contest. But that is how an OSHA inspection is conducted. Penalties and fines for a willful violation, it can be up to $134,000, $134,937 for each willful violation, $13,494 for serious violation. Other than serious, same $13,494. And a repeat, which is the same citation within a 5-year period, $134,937. So as you can see, can be very expensive to not be compliant with OSHA, and by the same token, it can be very expensive because it can result in a fatality if you are not compliant with OSHA. Where can we go for help? Sources within the workplace, worksite, OSHA.gov. Ohio BWC has a wonderful website. Ohio BWC has wonderful resources for us. I've talked to several people through the BWC. They're more than willing to come out and help us with situations on job sites. Sources outside the workplace, and also how to file an OSHA complaint. That's on the website too, OSHA.gov. We recommend sources within the workplace, supervisors, safety data sheets, warning labels, employee orientation manuals, safety supervisors, and even other safety supervisors, even other safety people from other contractors. Here at the AGC, I know for a fact that our safety people would be more than willing to help other safety people and other contractors on job sites to maintain a safe and healthy workplace. So here's some more resources, OSHA.gov. NIOSH. NIOSH is the sister agency of OSHA, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. They are actually the ones that do the testing. They certify respirators, respiratory equipment. So NIOSH is a great resource. The internet, safety issues, just Google safety and you will find a vast amount of information on the internet regarding safety and OSHA compliance. 2019, most cited violations of 2019. These are parallel 2018 and even 2017. So when OSHA goes out on a job site, unfortunately, the thing that they cite the most is fall protection general requirements, 1926.501. Then hazard communication, scaffolding, lockout, tagout, and even respiratory protection. These are all things, like I said, these have been pretty much the same 2016, 17, 18, and 19, and we really see no changes for 2020. Ladders, number 6, Power industrial trucks, number 7, that is lack of training. In order to drive a forklift on a job site, we must have our forklift driver's license. And there again, we don't go to the license bureau to get that. This is training, this is testing that's done within the company to be able to be certified to operate a powered industrial truck or a forklift. Fall protection training requirements is the 8th most cited violation in 2019. Machine guarding on the general industry side, 1910-212, and personal protective equipment. Remember, personal protective equipment, most personal protective equipment, most of your PPE is to be purchased by the employer. The only thing that really is not purchased by the employer is your shoes. Unless they are metatarsal protection, unless they are specialty shoes that you won't normally wear on a daily basis. So, fall protection, harnesses, lanyards, retractables, eye protection, hard hats, safety vests, all that stuff should be paid for per the OSHA standard by the employer. So for Focus 4, these are the 4 mishaps that happen on job sites, the 4 classifications that are killing most of our construction workers. And those are falls, electrical, caught in between, and struck by. So 38.7% of the time when there is a fatality in the construction industry, it is a fall. Electrical accounts for 8.3% of the time. Caught in between, which is one of the classifications for trenching. When a wall collapses, you're caught in between. And struck by is 9.4% of the time. Unprotected sides and edges and holes for falls, improperly constructed walking and working surfaces, improper use of access equipment, failure to properly use fall arrest systems, slips and trips. These are all things that we do improperly, and this is where people are hurt and killed under the falls. Struck by flying objects, it could be a rigging failure, it could be a vehicle, it could be struck by a flying object such as a nail out of an air nailer, or out of a pneumatic or a powder actuated gun. Caught in between, like I said, trenching, rotating equipment. Please keep in mind, people, that an individual operating a excavator or a large crane cannot see behind them, and when they rotate that, they cannot see the backside, they cannot see their counterweight. If you try to pass between the counterweight and a wall or another vehicle and there's no room, they do not know it, and they just keep on working. So please be aware of that. Caught in between rotating equipment, unguarded parts. We're talking pulleys, rotating pulleys, augers, PTOs, things like that, equipment rollovers, and especially equipment maintenance. Electrocution, like I said, electrical, contact with overhead power lines, even just the power coming out of a duplex out of the wall. It only takes 75 milliamps to stop your heart. It takes 15 amps draw on a drill to get a drill started. 75 milliamps is minimal. It doesn't take much electricity to pass through the body to stop your heart. Lightning strikes. When lightning is around, then you should seek shelter immediately. So OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA will be here. OSHA is here, and OSHA is here to help all of us. They do help the employees. They are geared for the employees. They do help employers. There are times when we can reach out to OSHA and get advice from them for certain situations. Focus 4, please be aware of that. Falls, electrical, caught in between and struck by, the four things that kill most of our construction workers. Please be safe.